Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling.
Welcome, everyone, to Morning Magazine for this March 2nd, 2022. You have your host, James J. Malouf, here. For the entire hour today, we're going to talk to our friends at the Wood County Sheriff's Department. We have joining us Investigative Lieutenant Scott Goldberg. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. How are we doing?
Doing all right. How you doing, man?
Good.
Good to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it.
We also want to welcome in Security Lieutenant Byron Peterson with us. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How you doing?
Very good.
Good to hear. And a big shout out to our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. We have Kev here. Good morning, Kev, and all of our friends over there. Appreciate you guys being here. So let's go ahead and dive into this because I don't want to waste any second of your guys' time. First up, do want to thank you for what you do for our community and appreciate you guys being here and taking the time to put up with me and Kev and everything and have some fun. Do want to get into a couple of things with you first, Scott, if you don't mind. You guys have had some a press release recently about some recent activity.
Yeah, sure. We've had a pretty busy start of the year with. I'll give a lot of credit to our drug investigators at the Sheriff's Department, and we've been fighting the drug pandemic along with every other community in the country, really. Yeah. We've been seeing a pretty good quantity of some pretty tough drugs. Fentanyl, heroin. Methamphetamines, coming into our community like other communities. And our drug investigators have been working on some of these cases for quite some time. Some of these cases drag out not only weeks, months, some of them are year-long investigations. We've had a couple of them on the south end of the county, down by Nakusa area, not in the city, but outside of the city. And then we had one case that was up by the Marshfield area that are kind of noteworthy. The first one that comes into mind happened just after the first of the year, where we took very large quantities of fentanyl and cocaine out of a residence and a large amount of cash that comes along with that, around $17,000 worth of cash. With that said, probably our biggest in our county that we know of, the largest quantity of drugs we've ever taken on one seizure. So we're talking if those drugs were cut up and given out the dosages on the street, we're talking several $100,000 worth of drugs hitting our streets. And that's not even the biggest concern. The money is one thing. It's about people's safety. Yeah. And, we watch the news. It's very easy for us to watch the news nationally and see, people are dying from these overdoses, and but we're seeing them right here in our communities too. And it goes. There's several different areas that we're concerned about. Obviously, we're concerned about people's lives, but those are our local people that have these addiction issues. Some of them suffer from mental health issues. So they're fighting these addiction issues, mental health issues. The pandemic has obviously put on extra stress for some of these people, financially, not being able to work and things. So we're seeing some of these things kind of fire up. And then we're working on obviously taking down some of these bigger, we'll call them drug dealers that are coming into our communities, selling these drugs to our residents. So it's really a tough deal, and we're not unique to any other community. But we are, and I know Sheriff Becker stands by this too. We're going to make drug dealing hard in our community. Yeah. If you want to sell drugs in our community, we're going to make it hard for you. But we're also going to do what we can to provide services for people who have addiction issues. And so we can try to solve these problems,
It comes back to the first conversation Sheriff Becker and I had, and it actually was off air that we brought on to air about stopping the revolving door. It's you hear a lot of talk nowadays. Oh, well, we do this, it's going to kill off this. Right. We know that there is no magic bullet for these kind of situations of stopping that revolving door. It is a layered thing. It starts certainly with what you touched on there, Scott, about mental health, and that's a part of it. Giving people, people having resources for work, things like that. There's a lot of layers to that we don't have to necessarily go diving into each single layer. But I think it's important to bring into this conversation because for people that may have never been in that world or ever done anything like that, it's very easy to assume things. It's very, and I want to make sure to preface this by saying that this isn't about personal responsibility comes first. You do the crime, you got to do the time, all those things. So I'm not looking for the world's smallest violin for anybody who's struggling with an addiction. I do think though, if you really do want to stop this, you've really got to do some digging. You can't just look at it on the surface and read the headline. You have to understand that if you want them to take some personal responsibility, we have to also, as a society, understand that comes with these things, that there's a chemical imbalance in people's brains they can't control, and it causes some of these things. You can chew and walk gum at the same time. You can look at somebody and say, well, they are guilty of this. They need to do said time because that's the laws and that's what we do here. Checks and balances. Also, how do we stop them from coming back and doing the same darn thing? It's a balance, and it's something that you guys at the Sheriff's Department have been doing, and I'm very proud to say that you guys are in the forefront of these things. And more communities, police departments, sheriff departments around the country, I've done the homework there, and you guys more than I have are doing this. But it's important, I think, for the people that aren't in this world to understand this stuff. And to kind of piggyback off of that just a little bit with you, Scott, as it's no secret to you guys or most, I am in a unique position where the first half of my life comes from that other side of the tracks. The other half of my life, thankfully, is on the good side of the tracks. Right. So I know this world inside and out quite a bit. And I will say that one of the things that prevents you guys from being able to do your job so often is the user having a weird loyalty to their dealer. And the idea of not wanting to share information or be a name dropper or dropping a dime, as it used to be called, and that kind of thing. And I always like to stress to people that person has no loyalty to you. That person would sell you out in a heartbeat, in a second, if it meant it would be one day off of their sentence. They'd knock you out quickly. You owe nothing to them. You owe no loyalty to them. You only owe it to yourself and your friends and family. You are not doing anything discouraging to do something like this, to drop a dime or however you want to word it or anything like that. You're trying to help your community, trying to help your future, your family, people that love and care about you have a better life. Scott, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, you're totally fine. First off, congratulations. That's awesome that you've made those changes, and we love hearing those success stories. Part of it is I think some people think this is a disease that doesn't discriminate, right? So it's every class, it's every race. We see it from young children to old. We just had some arrests recently where some people were in their late 60s or even 70s, pushing cocaine in our community. So it doesn't discriminate. And so we look at people that may not fully understand because maybe they don't have a close relative, but it could. It could very soon become that close relative, and it doesn't take much. You talked about the chemical changes that take place in a person's body, and it's we talk a lot, over the years. When I grew up, it was alcoholism. Right. We talked about people being alcoholics, right? Well, with that said, we don't hear much about that anymore. Is that still a problem in our community? Absolutely. It's a problem in everybody's community. But the focus has kind of gone more of this, more on drugs, because we have this instant situation that takes place. People are dying from these overdoses.
Especially when we look at the opioid epidemic that's been going on for a couple of years, and it is sort of, I don't want to take our foot off the gas, so say that it's lightening up any, but it certainly checks and balances have got a lot of these pharmaceutical companies to have to own up to some of the things that they were doing for years. But that doesn't change that there are still addiction issues out there. But when it came to, you mentioned cocaine or marijuana or any of these like standard things that a lot of us grew up with as the, under the drug umbrella, we think of those things first. We don't tend to think of these other ones, these as I've heard people in the street call the more high class addiction. The pill, it's just a pill. It's not that. And now we've learned, of course, there is a lot of issues with that with the addiction. It really stemmed from that, of people realizing that it's not just something that people choose to do, that it's something that their brains decide, or that their DNA kind of works out. Sometimes some of us are born with addictive personalities, some of these things. Again, it is not taking away accountability. It's just finding an answer to the question. Right. The only way we get through, if you are sitting there listening and like you were like me and grew up in the 80s with the Just Say No campaign or some of the other campaigns we've done against drugs, if you really want to put an end to this and bring those numbers down, this is the only way to do it. It isn't just sweeping everything under the bed. It isn't just, hey, you are guilty of this, you're going away for life. Like that, we know that doesn't solve anything. We've already got the data to prove that. The 80s proved that. We have now an understanding of what do we do going forward to bring these numbers down? How do we get rid of this in our communities?
And part of that is our responsibility to educate people, and so people have an understanding with what's taking place. And some of the concerns, and that's why we're here on the radio talking about some of the trends that we're seeing, some of the issues we're having. And if you're a person out there that maybe uses some of these drugs, you need to be aware that we're seeing fentanyl, which is the most deadly drug out there right now, traced in marijuana. So you might think you're just smoking a joint, but you're getting fentanyl. Yeah. We're seeing it with cocaine. We're seeing it attached to all different drugs. Yeah. Any way the drug dealer can stretch that drug to make more profit, because it's about money for the drug dealer, right? So it's a business. It's not a good business, but it's a business. Yeah. And so they're stretching it. So I caution anybody to put anything in their body that they don't know what it is. And that's part of it, is that education. We need to start young, and we do. We communicate with our, grade schools, high schools, all the way through and into adulthood, So I'm not sure at this point, the struggle that people deal with is not only the drugs, but it's a lot of times connected to what happened in their lives, how they got to that place. And so some of it's just that mental health portion with the drugs. Right. So there's a lot of different angles these addictions come from.
When it comes to somebody struggling with an addiction too, one of the things that has kept a lot of people from seeking help oftentimes is the shame or the idea that the way we kind of treat drug abuse in society, where it's something you don't mention unless it's in a hushed voice or something. Interestingly, just to tie in this, at the Family Center, one of the things that we do, that we talk about sexual abuse and these things in a raised voice. You notice I didn't hush my voice when I said that. Like when we were kids, maybe we used to talk about these things. We talk about them now more in an open voice, so that we can bring attention to this stuff, and so that people out there that are struggling that we don't know about know that, okay, there's no shame in what you've been through. You're not the person that caused this. You are the victim. In these kind of things. Similar with people with addictions, there is that shame, that whole, I can't tell mom and dad, I can't tell this officer that I know or something like that. I might get arrested, or I'm going to have my whole family, my whole community shaming me or something like that. Those things, while we can't predict whether they'll happen or not, we can predict that there's only a couple of outcomes if you are an addict. Right. I'm so thankful that I can talk about my dad and say that my dad is more than likely going to go into sleep or something like that. My father was a Hall of Fame addict. I mean, this man had it down, and there's only two ways that ends: him locked up for life or him dying of an overdose. I'm proud to say that the man's probably going to be in his sleep or something like that. That does not happen. That's something that the stats on that are literally in the 2 to 5% of addicts, that the longer you are an addict, the less likely you are to have an ending like that. Mm-hmm. So we want you around. It's not about the checks and balances and that kind of thing. It's more about helping other people in society and stopping these things. And again, bringing those numbers down. That's how we do this.
And I think a big portion too is the programs that we do now see and hear about. Yeah. I think before, like growing up, you never heard about a drug program, or if you have an addiction, come talk to us. I think they just didn't know where to turn back then, so they dealt with it alone. Yeah. And I think that's what caused a lot of depression and addiction in that way, because they just didn't have the program like we do now. And I think it's more out there, more vocal. Hey, you have programs out there, people who want to help you and know it's not your fault. And I think that helps out a lot.
It's a really strong point, Byron. Yeah. I think that with the rise of that and the attention to those things and the funding that's gone into those, that's not only helped us as society. I would like to think, I don't have the stats necessarily, but hopefully it's helped you guys out as well. Maybe less addicts out there, or maybe things, situations that you guys shouldn't necessarily be called for, that they are seeking like actual medical help on, and that kind of thing. That seems like an outlier of this too.
Right, and I see a lot of hand in hand with these program communities coming with the sheriff's department and us going hand in hand, so we can work together at this to try to solve the problem.
Yeah, early on in our careers, Lieutenant Peterson and I started around the same time, and when someone had these addiction issues, we had nowhere to go. We had no clue. We see a person suffering. Families reaching out to us asking, what can we do? And there was nothing we could do. There was nowhere to point anybody. And at least
short term, take them to jail. That's what we did.
We covered up the problem, right?
Yeah.
We covered up the problem by taking them to jail. Not to say that sometimes jail isn't the right place for some people, because obviously there's a punishment that's attached to some of these crimes. And there's no hiding the fact that some people, the only way they're going to get sober, to think clearly, is to sit those days in jail. Yeah. And that takes time. Some of these people, it takes weeks to fully get all these drugs out of their system. Yeah. And then we go in and talk to them. Yeah. And we have the mental health professionals working inside the jail now that can, assist them. Obviously, you got to want the help too. But they're there to assist as to kind of move forward and try to get some of these people to break this chain that we see. So
I think that a lot of people at this stage in the game, with the amount of TV shows that are, cop shows or that, I've watched every single Law and Order episode there's ever been, things like that. A lot of us understand the process of an investigation and what it takes, informants, information, tracking that information down, checking sources, all these things. Are there things that involved in an investigation, not to ask specifics or details certainly, but outline kind of things that maybe the audience wouldn't know about, Scott, that you'd find that they might find interesting as far as this process and maybe even helpful in them sharing information?
Yeah, and I'm not going to go into all the details because we don't give out all of our tricks. Right, but I will say that technology we utilize a lot more than we used to. Obviously. We all know that there's ways to track technology, different applications on phones and phones themselves and computers and things like that. But a lot of times, some of the best information we get is a person that sees something repeatedly in the community. And I reach out to all of your listeners that, hey, if you're seeing the short-term traffic at a residence, you're seeing short-term traffic at a gas station, you need to reach out to law enforcement because a lot of our bigger busts have started off of just a tip from someone in the community. And then we talked about you talked a little bit about informants. Yeah, we utilize informants. We work with some people that have addiction issues who are trying to get better, that want to assist in getting a lot of times their drug dealer off the street so they can't buy the drugs themselves from this person. And sometimes they get some benefits from that. Maybe they get probation instead of sitting in jail, or they get a shorter jail sentence for helping us out. But those are some of the techniques that we use with some of these drug investigations that can last. And I think a lot of times TV perceives that this is going to be wrapped up in a day or two.
Right.
And it's
come
always,
back from the commercial break and the guy's arrested. Yeah,
exactly. And unfortunately, doesn't always work that way. And so we'll have citizens sometimes that reach out and say, well, I gave this tip out 2 months ago and nothing's been done. Just because the tip came out doesn't mean nothing was done. Some of these cases take a long time to develop. And we can't use just a tip and go to a judge and say we want a search warrant for our house. We need a probable cause. And it takes a while to obtain that probable cause. And sometimes we have to, do buys inside that house. And when I say buys, we will send our officers undercover into residence sometimes. And that's no different than the movies, right? And then sometimes we utilize informants to do so, and with our assistance. In a sense, it's kind of like what you see on the movies, but a lot different. I would say the biggest thing I would describe different, it's slower, safer for the person that's doing these types of buys. That's our number one concern, is the safety of our people that are working on these cases.
We're on the same page, Scott, because that was the key part of this that I really wanted to hit on for that person that might be afraid to share information or hesitant to or anything. It's not TV in that respect. There is a lot more safety involved, a lot more time involved. And also to be able to give these, people out there like yourself, Scott, that are putting in so many man hours on these things that quite bluntly, you don't always know if it's going to turn out. You don't know if it's going to lead to arrest. You don't know if it's going to. So the idea, and I think anybody can relate to this, you put so many hours into this project, and knowing you do all that, you're doing that project, I'm not sure if this is going to work out or not, but I got to do my diligence here. I got to do this job. I think that's an important part, as much as another thing you mentioned in there of the word of mouth and how important that is in an investigation. I think some people sometimes bite their tongue because they feel, oh, well, somebody else will say something. Right. Or, oh, they probably already know about this. They're good at their job, so they probably already know. They don't need my information. Oh, that information you don't know. You never know that may be the first time. They never even looked at that. But all of a sudden, like, wait a minute. Oh, they thank you, citizen. That now I know something is going on there. Right. This isn't about, I think many of us don't like necessarily getting people in trouble. It's not about getting people in trouble. It's about keeping our community safer. It's about making sure that there aren't more overdoses, that there aren't more violence caused from a deal or something like that. Or kind of trying to play offense instead of defense when it comes to the drug epidemic in our country, which has been going on for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with giving out that information, a lot of times people are reluctant to give that information. They don't want to be what on the street they call it the snitch, right?
Yeah,
they don't want to be a snitch. They don't want to be a part of it. They can do this anonymously. They can use our Crime Stoppers. They can call our dispatch center and say, I don't want my name attached to any of this, but here's this information. And some people don't even realize it. We've been really close to doing search warrants or having enough for probable cause to do a search warrant on our residence, and we're just not quite there with that probable cause, and then we get the tip. And somebody calls in, gives us that information, we can add that to a affidavit, and next thing you know, we're getting these drugs off the streets. We're getting these bad people off the streets and getting them, hopefully, the help they need. So a little bit of information. These investigations are very much a puzzle, right?
Yes.
And we're piecing them together. And sometimes we're just missing that one piece or two pieces, and then when they come in, we can put everything together. And that goes away. And I'm not just going to give this information for info for drugs. It's anything that we're seeing on there. Burglaries, thefts, any type of suspicious activity. A tip goes so far nowadays. And don't think that they're not looked into, because every day I come to work and I get these Crime Stopper tips that come in completely anonymous. I as a law enforcement officer don't even know who these people are, but that little bit of information, then I send them out to the appropriate officer that's looking into these, into those types of investigations, whether it's a theft or if it's drugs, or even we get traffic complaints, which is fine, and they can be kept completely anonymous. And I can't emphasize that more.
One of the things you mentioned there, you brought up a good one with the puzzles, and that's a good analogy, I think, for this, especially because it's one of the things to keep in mind here, especially with these tips. Say you brought up an example of I give a tip and it's like 2 weeks, 2 months, and nothing's been done. Part of the reason why you guys got to do that stuff is certainly because that's the job that you have, but you're not putting that puzzle together by yourselves. The district attorney, the attorneys there and everything that have to try these cases, you're putting that puzzle together with them. So in order to give them be able to do what they do and be able to bring this home, if you will, to lack of a better way to put it, is all giving them every little bit of information, every little fact that you can, so that when they go and take this to trial, if it goes to trial, they are able to bring that case home. They are able to make sure that that person is off the street. The more information that you have, the better it is to be able to do this. So that's something that I think we forget as citizens sometimes. You know, we almost think that even though we understand the judicial system and all these things, we almost look at it as a separate thing. And it's more times that, in more ways than not, it is tied with what you guys do. You guys have to work. It's a partnership.
Right. And not just within our own community, but we also reach out and deal with other people in other communities as well. Other departments and state agencies, they all get involved, and all we work together, not just to solve crimes here, but these crimes here might be associated with some in Stevens Point. Right. So then we have to tie everything together that way.
It's something that Sheriff Beck and I have touched on before that I find very encouraging in our community, and I'll just speak to Central Wisconsin here, the sharing of information. Mm-hmm. That wasn't always the case. You know, you talk to him about some of the old ways of doing things and stuff, and it's really encouraging to hear that. Mm-hmm. I think that only speaks to things getting better, things growing stronger, and us having an even safer community.
Right. And I think you hit that on the bubble. There used to be a pride thing. Yeah. I think that was attached with this is a big drug bust or this is a big bust. And it's not. It's about how can we make everybody safe? How can we help our community? And it's we work with agencies every day, from the state all the way to the federal level. We have cases that are going regularly at the federal level on a regular basis also. So it's not just local police. It extends well beyond state lines even sometimes.
I've noticed in all the press releases and different media coverage of these stories, when these happen, you will see that. You see that it's the Rapids Police Department and this department working together or something like that. So I think that's noteworthy too, that's being covered that way and showing those things too.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and, that was a great conversation, you guys. That was awesome. We're got a half an hour in, so we'll go ahead and we'll take our break right here. We'll come back and we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to put Bryan to work here a little bit, make him work a little bit more. We'll come back and do that on Morning Magazine here on WFHR, locally grown radio.
It's time for part 2.
Welcome back, everyone, to Morning Magazine for this March 2nd, 2022. Your host, James, here, and we are joined by the Wood County Sheriff's Department along with our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. And good morning to Kevin, the gang over there. And a good morning to Investigative Lieutenant Scott Goldberg. Thanks again for being here, Scott.
You bet. Thank you.
And Security Lieutenant Byron Peterson. And Byron, I'm going to put you to work a little bit here, too, because we haven't gotten a chance to really dive into this, I feel. There's been some changes that have gone on over at the courthouse over the last couple of years. And just kind of talking about how that's gone and some of the things going on over there.
Okay. Yeah, so I want to start off by giving a huge shout out, I guess, to Judge Brazo that works at the Wood County Courthouse, along with our county board. Judge Brazo, when he became judge, started taking some trainings and seeing that there is a lot of security issues within our building and for the safety of all employees and the public that work there.
I don't want to mess with your flow, Brian. I apologize. Sure. If you could get a little closer to the mic for me. Thank you. I just want to make sure they can hear you. That's
I'm
all.
not as boisterous as my partner over here. Yeah, so.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So he brought up some concerns and issues that we had at the courthouse, and the county board listened to his comments and decided, yes, this is something we should look into. The Judge Brazo took that by the horns and started doing some research and buying some equipment. And we started October of 2019 with the Security Services Division for the department.
Wow.
So
I didn't think it's been that long already.
It has been that long
yeah,
already.
Wow.
And it only took about a month for our first gun to try to get into the courthouse. So since October of 2019, we've had 17 guns try to come into the courthouse. I specifically remember one individual who came in. We found out that he had a gun on him, and he was appalled. He goes, "I've been bringing my gun in for years." Cool. So it's a eye-opening how much this was going on all the time, and that we didn't even have an idea. And with our courts, especially on our third floor, being the courts section of the courthouse, there's a lot of tense moments up there, and people don't usually like to be in court. So with all these weapons trying to come into the courthouse, it was eye-opening to me, knowing, well, you have the sheriff's department connected to the courthouse. Yeah. People know they shouldn't bring weapons to the courthouse, but yet this is still happening. So with that being said, it only took like our first couple weeks within starting security services that a gun tried to come through, even though they came in and saw the security equipment. So with that being said, there's numerous people that come into the courthouse, look at the security equipment, turn around and walk away. So it's like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Some return back later saying, yeah, I had my gun on me, I forgot all about it, or I had knives on me. So then they take them back out to the car and come back. So in years past, they wouldn't do that. They just come right into the courthouse and nobody would say anything to them. So yeah, like I said, since October 19, 17 guns, over 3,300 knives have tried to come into the courthouse. Not surprising, I guess the number, but being born in central Wisconsin, I mean, back when I was in school, I'd always have a pocket knife on me. Yeah. But just knowing what building you're going into, I mean, there's signage all over saying can't bring it into a state county building, but people still try to do it. 214 canisters of OC pepper spray, and then about 203 miscellaneous items that we don't allow into the courthouse that have tried to come in. So with that being said, some of the miscellaneous items,
I wanted to hit on that. Yes.
Getting back to why Investigator Goldberg's here, we've had marijuana, meth, and cocaine try to come into the courthouse, where we were able to stop it at the door and make some arrests off of that.
You can hear more about those in our That Ain't Right story during our morning show. What are you doing? Why would you do that? Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So along with the drugs, also is drug paraphernalia that tries to come in. A taser was tried to brought in, people with brass knuckles, a baton, loaded magazines. They said, well, I didn't bring my gun in, but, well, we don't allow the ammunition either. Even empty holsters, so you know that these people had guns on them to try to come in. Alcohol, and then a lot of hand tools. I can't believe how many people carry pliers and screwdrivers in their pockets. So all that kind of stuff we don't allow. There is a listing on the website, on our website, of what we allow and what we don't allow. It's also on our door at the courthouse. So there is quite a few items that aren't allowed in there, and people are, I guess they don't remember they have them sometimes, or just don't think it's necessary. So
I think that many citizens, especially when this first came about, I remember taking calls. I remember hearing from some people in the community about certainly the Second Amendment and personal rights and these sorts of things. And I would always push back on those things, that this isn't about you.
Right.
This is, we tend to, especially as Americans, and I love this about us, and I'm proud of this as well, that we take on certain things and it's almost as if freedom is ours, that we're the only ones that experience these things and such. There is a big difference of something being in the Bill of Rights or in the Constitution and being a birthright. This idea of that. Part of the reason why we do have a society that we do, that we can walk around, that we do have these firearms, that we do have the Second Amendment and all that, came from a lot of the people before us paving the way for us to be able to handle this in society, that we don't have that we don't have it even more out of whack as it could be in certain realms. And I would like to think that every citizen out there, whether you know a judge, an attorney, whether you know any of these people or not, or anybody in law enforcement, you care about their safety. You would want them to feel safe on the job. It's one of the tougher jobs in the world as it is. The least we can do is make it as safe as possible. That is where this stems from. Nobody's trying to get rid of the Second Amendment or trying to take away your rights or any of this. We take these personal inconveniences sometimes and turn them into a mission, or, I'm going to stand on this or something. Choose your battles wisely. This is not that battle. This is not that one.
Exactly. Yeah, like you said, I mean, there's just, even with our concealed carry laws that we have out there, there are limitations to that as well. So people just need to know the rules on everything. We're not trying to disarm anybody. It's just in certain buildings, it's not allowed. So,
and I appreciate you breaking down too the weapons and the types of things that are going in there, because for some, I would say, I'm a construction worker. I've got a tool belt on me constantly and everything.
Right.
I know when I work construction, half the time I forgot to take it off when I got home or something.
Right.
I could see the accidental walking into a courthouse with a screwdriver or something like that. It's important to know those things, because obviously of the factors of what we said before, but also it's just an inconvenience for you. I mean, you're going to have to go back to your car, drop it off, come back, all those things. As you mentioned before, not many people go to the courthouse because they look, want to, or they're looking forward to it. Oftentimes you've got stressors already. You don't need to add stressors on top of that.
Right. And we know that happens, and that people forget that they have that. So it's not like we make a big deal about it. It's like, oh, sorry, sir or ma'am, could you please return that to their vehicle? A lot of times we won't hold on to that, because if we get busy, then we don't want to give somebody that's leaving something that's not theirs. So basically, if we keep it, usually we hold on to it forever. But we will give you that option. Yeah, sorry, that's not allowed. Please return it back to your vehicle. I know going to Brewer games, I've lost several knives because I've had a pocket knife on there. And I'm not walking 3/4 of a mile to take it back. So I'm
no.
But so it's a little easier here in this aspect where, okay, you just have to cross the street or go around the block to drop it off. So it's not like we understand that it happens, and we know where we live, and people come in there and they have 22 ammunition. I mean, nowadays that's hard to find, but 22 ammunition in their pocket. Oh, I was out squirrel hunting, before I came, which is acceptable, and that's what we do around here in central Wisconsin. So
these things are taken with context. They when there is some benefit of the doubt given with some stuff, with certain things.
Exactly.
That's. First up, I don't think that's necessarily in the rule books. You don't have to do that. I appreciate that you guys do that. And as citizens, we appreciate that, certainly. But One of the things that I can't let I have to come back to, because I remember when we were first talking about this and getting into it, and one of the things that we were talking about was playing offense on this subject and not defense, not waiting for something bad to happen at the courthouse before we ended up doing this. Before, when we were talking about it, we didn't have these stats though. Hearing these stats, and I know that this is just a given amount of time, this data, but that's alarming.
Right.
That is alarming to me to think of. That's what was going on just in the time that we've had this, and we know, let alone what might have happened before. We're fortunate that we are playing offense, that we didn't have to play defense on this.
Very easily could have went the other way, yes. And like I said, I mean, we have signs now. We have armed deputies in full uniform at the front door with the scanning equipment, and people are still trying to bring it in. So it's like, okay, how much? This is what we're stopping that we know of. What are we stopping just by being there? So
you mentioned people can see this stuff online as far as the lists of things that are acceptable, and that it's on the website.
Yes, it's on the Wood County website.
Right. Okay.
So.
And we'll get that web addy a little bit later. I'll pull that up. I'll find that. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Is there other things that you wanted to share about the courthouse and what's going on over there?
Yeah, I guess just knowing that we're there. I mean, we and this is another, getting into being anonymous. If you have something that you want to tell an officer, but you don't want to call an officer to your house, you don't know the number maybe to call them, or you're just at the courthouse maybe to get a birth certificate or something, but something's been on your mind. We do have sworn officers at the front doors walking around the courthouse all the time now. Just numerous times we've had people come to approach us, hey, I just want to let you guys be aware of this or know about this. We've had people that just want to talk. We're there. We can help out, point you in the right direction if we can't help you, or get you started on, solving that complaint that you do have. So don't feel free to come in. Even if it's not our department, we'll get you in touch with the right people. And that's happened numerous times over the last couple of years. So.
That website I was mentioning, co.wood.wi.us, you go there and you can get right to the department, the sheriff's department, and you'll find that information. Let's go ahead and take our final break. We'll do that. We'll take that and come back, and we'll wrap. We'll take it to the top of the hour as we're catching up with our friends at the Wood County Sheriff's Department here on Morning Magazine, WFHR, locally grown radio. Welcome back, everybody, to Morning Magazine for this March 2nd, 2022. We are speaking with Investigative Lieutenant Scott Goldberg. Thanks for being here, Scott.
You bet. Thank you.
Security Lieutenant Byron Peterson also with us, and thanks a lot for being here.
Yeah, my honor.
Big shout out to our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, Kevin, the gang also being here. And I guess we get to talk about the new building a little bit here, guys.
We can bring that up.
Okay, all right, good. I was kind of looking forward to this. It has been a long process to get to here. But it's kind of funny, while we were building to this and building towards even getting the right, the ability to do this and the city to okay it and all those things, it was kind of like we'd have three headlines and it'd be this and this we would talk about. And the third or second thing would always be the courthouse and, getting the funding for it and everything. Now that we've gotten it and we're getting closer and closer to bids being out and everything, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. It's interesting, but It is exciting that we're going to be having this.
It is very exciting. We are moving ahead pretty within the near future here to put out bids. We're looking, I believe, at a start date in July, without anything pushing that back a little bit back. But I think July is about the time frame we're looking at to start this project, which will take 2.5 years to complete. It's not just a little residential building. This is going to be quite the complex that we're looking at. And, everybody talks about it as the jail project, the jailhouse. But along with that is the sheriff's department, which will be moved into there and giving us more room for the sheriff's department, and also a new entrance point for the courthouse. So if anybody's been in the courthouse recently, we're a little tight area where the security checkpoint is, and trying to funnel people in and out of that one little corridor can be time consuming at times, congested at times. So with this, the county board saw the need for that as well and thought, well, let's combine all this together. So we'll be having a new entrance for the courthouse and sheriff's department and jail. We'll all be funneled into one area, which will be a nice staging area where you can go courthouse one side, sheriff's department, jail on the other side. So it's going to impact more than just the inmates and the jail staff there. It's going to be sheriff's department as well, and anybody coming to the courthouse.
I think if you look at the design layout, it's there are some similarities if you've been to the new Y, and you see how that's broken. You have no issue finding the Boys and Girls Club there or the VFW, or that it's separated well at the same time connected.
Right.
When it comes to something like this, an outlier that I hadn't thought of when we were first talking about it, but earlier we were talking about the sharing of information between departments and that. It seems like one of the added bonuses to this new building will be even easier to be able to do, to share information, to be able to work together with others, and not just other departments or other, the sheriff's department and the police department, but so much also you guys in your own departments, in the sheriff's department and that.
Correct. Yes. At the sheriff's department now, I mean, we're so separated all the time in different wings and different sections that this way we'll be a lot closer together, working hand in hand, I think, more closely with the jail and the jail staff, knowing on what's going on with that. Talking at a security issue, it's huge. I mean, you have a 1950s building, and now back then they didn't care, or I guess it wasn't on their minds as much as a security standpoint, where it is now. So having that funneled into a central location where everybody would be, and it's built for security and around security, is going to be huge.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and part of it for investigations, we have investigators kind of spotted all over within the sheriff's department right now. We're all going to be centralized in one area, which is going to be super helpful that we can just walk into somebody's office much quicker to exchange information like you had been speaking about. Other parts of it that we're excited about, we have a space issue with evidence. A lot of people don't think about evidence, but some of that evidence you think of a suspicious death or something, that'll be with us forever. Oh, yeah. You never can get rid of that. Yeah. And so we're going to get a very large evidence area that needs to be taken care of. And even a simple we were talking about drugs earlier. Yeah. So if we got some meth on a person and the trial goes through, we have to hold on to that until all the appeals process. That all takes time and that all takes space. Yeah. And we're out.
Man, they didn't show you that on NYPD Blue.
No,
you didn't see that. I never even thought about that. That's a great point. Huh.
Yeah, and so we're definitely running out of space there. So that's been a challenge that we've been fighting for years. And as an investigative lieutenant, that's something that excites me. Wouldn't excite most people in the community, but that's exciting to have a spot to put this stuff, because otherwise people come and go, hey, we got this safe that we need to from a burglary. Yeah. We need to put somewhere. Where do we put it? We're out of space. Yeah.
When we moved into the new building, got the new equipment and everything, all this is really exciting. But we have one little device over here. I'll show you guys where I push this and I can flip screens and go to this screen. It's just one little button. You would have thought that they cured cancer or something. I got so excited about that little button. It's just it's fun. That's good. And this brings to mind something else that I wanted to bring up with the courthouse, and that's something that we don't get a chance to talk about nearly enough when it's not just our sheriff's department, but anybody with a badge, or our EMTs, or our people that are on the front lines in the day-to-day world. We don't talk about mental health for you guys enough, and I got to imagine that being a little more closer together, as you mentioned with the investigative department and those things, being able to be there for each other. We don't know when we're going to get hit over the head with a bad day or when a bad moment. So having your partners around nearby in that is going to only help with that, I would think. And I hope, and maybe this is more of a subconscious thing than not, seeing that the community backed this, that the community, the overwhelming number of people that were supporting of this new jail and everything, hopefully in the backs of your minds or the front of your hearts, wherever it is, that you guys see that you are not alone out there, that we support you guys, that we believe in what you're doing, we have your back. And in these kind of things, well, we can't, stop you every 5 seconds and tell you this. Hopefully these things are reminders on those rougher days.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And we do see that from our community. And we do appreciate that. And our mental health for our officers is a huge priority for our department. We have a few officers that are trained in peer support, and we help each other out a lot of times. Cops are a unique breed in the sense that we don't we have a lot of lot of stories to tell, if you will, and some of them have a lot of nastiness to them, right? So we don't want to go home and tell our families about them like someone else that has a bad day. So we use that peer support because if I tell Bryan something that I had seen or something that I had heard or been to, he understands it. He's been there. He's seen the nastiness too. And that's the best way to connect, is to be able to communicate and have someone to listen to, to get this off our chests a lot of times. And so you're right, being together, having that organization, having officers that can reach out to other officers that are kind of struggling with something they've seen or heard, or a career full of bad things that they've seen. It's definitely beneficial.
I think a lot of us can relate to that, where we want people that can speak to what we know or have experienced some of what we have. If I have an issue with an audition, I go to other actors and talk about it, that kind of thing.
And that's where I do want to praise Sheriff Sean Becker on that. He has taken that bull by the horn. I know when I first started in law enforcement, and like the older guys, you wouldn't talk about this stuff. You just keep it inside. Let it fester inside there. And Sean's really pushed for all of his staff and us to go to crisis intervention and learn how to deal with this and talk with other people, because it's not healthy to keep everything in like that. So he's the big pusher for that, and I can see where it has helped me in the past, and the younger generation coming up into law enforcement too.
We really can't have we can't wrap our minds around how much it might help going forward. That certainly. I think I think the younger generations have a pretty good handle on some of this stuff. I'm thinking of people like around our age, and some of us that were raised by the Gary Coopers of the world, the strong, quiet type, and that and everything. It's a new world being, sharing these things and stuff. It's not always easy. Thankfully, a lot of us are on the same page with that, where we're all kind of learning how to do these things and how to share this stuff. I second everything you're saying there with Sheriff Becker, in part because I know it's not easy being that first guy to get the ball rolling.
Right.
Like, you take so much more than we even see or know or anything like that. And it's not easy to do that, being that first person to do those things. It's greatly appreciated, but it's also necessary. I'm thankful that we got ahead of the game on this one, but it's one of those things that around the world you're going to be seeing more of this and more attention being brought to it, and that is only going to make us a better society. If you guys are feeling better and doing better in your job, that means we're all a little bit better. One of the ways to tell the pulse of your community is how your sheriff, your police departments are doing, not just about how many arrests they make or those kind of things. What is the turnover rate like at that place? What is those kind of outlying numbers? That's the stuff to pay attention to. And if you notice, in our area, we don't have a lot of turnover. We don't have a lot of people coming to this area, a lot of hometown kids wanting to come back here and stuff, but not the reverse. There's a lot of pride that can be taken, I would feel, in your guys' departments and that.
Yes,
that goes a long way.
Yeah, we've been blessed that way, and we get good employees and we keep good employees. And Bryan is exactly, he's correct. When we started, 15, 16, 17 years ago, you'd be afraid because we're supposed to be these tough guys. But it's not normal, some of the stuff we see. And now working for, Sheriff Sean Becker, he makes it so easy. We have debriefs after major incidents that be able to get out and talk about it during these debriefs with other people that maybe were at the scene. And that was unheard of when we started. It just didn't happen. And I remember my first debrief I ever heard of was probably 15 years ago. And I watched all the older officers say, I'm not going. Now it's like everybody's going. And, you go, you listen. Sometimes you have nothing to say, but it's good to get it off your chest and move on to the next one. So
I remember in football, I pulled my hamstring and nobody noticed. So I'm a third down receiver. I want to get back out there, make this first down. And my coach looks and sees that I'm limping. And like, no, you're not going back out there. I wanted to be there for my team, want to be for my players and everything, but the coach has to decide that's just not. I know you have good intentions, but you're probably not even going to get off the line. That kind of thing. it is no different than with our minds. And while it is all well and good to want to just, tough it up and walk it off and all those things, you're only prolonging the problem. You talk about it, you get it out of the way, and pretty soon you can get back out on the field.
Right.
It is one of the things that's not just for you guys, but anybody out there listening. It's only going to help you. It's only going to benefit you. And you got people that are care about you that you're doing it for as well.
Right.
I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation, you guys. That was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for not only the time, but what you do in our communities. Stay safe and strong out there. Give Sheriff Becker a little bit of a hard time for me if you could.
We always do.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Since I can't do it, thanks, guys. And thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it.
A big thank you again to our friends at the Wood County Sheriff's Department, Investigative Lieutenant Scott Goldberg, Security Lieutenant Byron Peterson, and of course our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, Kevin, the gang over there. We appreciate you. We'll have more Morning Magazine tomorrow right here on WFHR, locally grown radio.